30th project, Marina Abramović in residence, in June-July 2015, was at Pier 23 in Walsh Bay. What an experience. Marina as a person is outstanding. As an artist, she is incredible. She affected the lives of so many people who were fortunate to be part of her exhibition, to witness her shows, whether in New York or London or anywhere else. It's a profound effect on people. I was very lucky that I became one of those people. So rather than talk in detail about our project, which is well documented on our website and in our archives, I rather speak about my personal encounters with Marina and the effect it had on me. And they were numerous. I was fortunate that on a business trip in New York in 2010 with my wife Naomi, we had the opportunity to look at her retrospective at MoMA. The artist is present, where for 8 hours a day, for 3 months, she sat opposite around 1,500 strangers returning their gaze. It was an incredible success. While she sat opposite people, 850,000 people were looking on, were witnessing her endurance, her incredible strength to be able to do that without getting up, without moving, without blinking. It was very impressive. It really stayed in my mind. In 2013, when we presented 13 rooms, one of her seminal works, Luminosity, was also represented to great success. And I thought it would be great to actually meet Marina and possibly arrange a solo project with her. Through Hans-Ulrich Obrist, we arranged a meeting for another trip to New York in 2013, when Naomi and I went to her office, met her staff, and had an initial discussion about a possible project in Sydney and how it would take place. She spoke to me about the Marina Abramović Institute and how through long duration exercise and meditation she wanted to bring her art into public arena. It was a very interesting and very productive first meeting. And I was so impressed with Marina that I became a bit of a groupie. So in the winter of 2013-2014, she had an experimental pop-up, if you like, of her institute at the Twangli Museum in Switzerland. And fortunately, I happened to be in Zurich, which is very close by, and wanted to participate. There were 7 tents erected in the grounds of the museum, and 4 visitors could participate at any one time. You had to book ahead. And when you arrived, you had to take your overcoat and jackets off. You were given a white lab coat, and you were paired off with one of the other 3 participants, absolute strangers. The first few rooms, I found simple yoga-type relaxing exercises, which were not that unusual for me. But then came an exercise that really had a profound effect on me. I was seated on high wooden chairs, sat opposite a youngish woman who I was paired up with, and for 20 minutes we were gazing into each other's eyes without moving. And I found that really a profound, moving, very emotional in a way, experience. The rest of the exercises, lying on a bed, I think being in an electric current, were interesting, but the gazing stayed with me very strongly. And afterwards I said to that person, let's go and have a coffee. And we had a coffee and we chatted, and fortunately she turned out to be a very personable woman. She was a Swiss television presenter, perfect English, and she had the same very strong reaction. And for years we stayed in touch. So following Marina's progress in Europe in 2014, I went to Geneva to the Gallery of Contemporary Art, where she also demonstrated some of her, what she calls, exercises. And I took part in counting rice, where you were given a heap of rice mixed with, I think, lentils, and you had to separate them into their respective groups. Now, it doesn't require a lot of skill, but it requires a lot of patience. And that's not my strong point. But I forced myself to sit for, it seemed like several hours, to separate rice from lentils. Also in Geneva, I had the opportunity to discuss further with Marina the plans for a project in Australia. Then that summer, the Serpentine Galleries in London, Marina had an exhibition called 512 Hours, where she took over the Serpentine. She literally had the keys to open the gallery in the morning, and Marina, her assistant Lindsay Passenger, and a number of facilitators used the public and put them through a number of exercises. But before doing that, you had to take your watch and phone and put it in a locker so that you were completely in another sphere. There was slow walk, there was standing on an energy pedestal, there was lying down and relaxing, and a number of others. What changed in Marina's art, as she started off as a performer, doing incredibly brave work, either on her own or then with her long-term partner, Ulay. But the last few years, instead of her doing all the work, she acted in a way like a conductor, a teacher who worked with the audience to use her methods to become part of the work. And it was most impressive. Again, we met with her and started to firm up the plans for Australia. We selected again Pier 2-3 as it was an ideal building for what we wanted to achieve. I not only wanted to show the Marina Abramović method with all the exercises that she had at her disposal, but I wanted to make Pier 2-3 the temporary headquarters of the Marina Abramović Institute, in which the public would be invited to participate downstairs at the pier. But upstairs, we had purpose-built living facilities for 12 young Australian artists that we selected together with Marina. and she would mentor them daily in her work. An incredible experience for those young artists. We also had daily lectures, films. We have invited school groups, especially a group from Dubbo who practiced performance art months before coming to Sydney, and who Marina treated those young kids as artists. It was really wonderful the way she worked with them. But downstairs, all her famous methods, all the famous teaching tools were used. We had slow walk, we had mutual gaze, we had sleeping, we had energy platform, gazing at color, counting rice. And I was fortunate that I had the services again of Zeidler architects, Greg Holman and Marco Rossi from Build, who purpose designed and constructed the spaces, custom-built furniture for mutual gaze, for counting rice, for energy platform. So, as Marina said, this is really a formula for me to take to the world. I have a few personal experiences. We were really, really busy, and it was hard work. And at times I was exhausted. So I made use of the beds during the performance, and one of the wonderful facilitators, we had 50 of them, tucked me in and put a blanket on me, like any of the visitors. And I must have fallen asleep and started to snore. So the poor girl came rushing to Bettina, saying, "What should we do? Johnny's fast asleep on one of the beds." They let me sleep for a while. One of the more profound ones was that Marina took my hand and said, "Let's do the slow walk." And the area for the slow walk was, I'd say, almost 100 meters. And if you do it properly, it could take you well over a half an hour to do, as every step took several seconds. So we started, and after the fourth or fifth step, I said, "I'm not going to last. I will not be able to do this for about an hour." And I was thinking, will somebody please contact me on the radio that there's an emergency or something that I can get out of it? But no. But then I settled into a rhythm, and it was beautiful. You entered into another pace. Also, as in the Serpentine, before you even entered the space, you had to take your watch, your phone off, which for most of us was a very disorienting experience. It was a great success. Marina was already well known. We had a lot of publicity, a lot of word of mouth. There were huge queues, and because of health and safety, we could only have 600 people at any one time. In the 12 days, we had over 30,000 people, and I believe it had a profound effect on the visitors, as there were many who came back day after day to be in that space. The final day happened to be on my birthday. So when it's all finished, the facilitators and Lindsay and Marina were very sweet. They sang me a birthday song, and Marina sat me down, and we gazed into each other's eyes for a few minutes. We were both exhausted, relieved, and very happy. As I said in the beginning, Marina is a very great artist whose career gets bigger and bigger as she goes along. She wrote an opera, which she directed. She travels the world over. But being close to her, you get to know her. And deep down, she's still a warm, wonderful woman. Like with many other artists, we keep in touch. Naomi and I saw her when she was at the Venice Biennale, and we follow her work. And I feel very privileged to have been able to do a project with her.